Episode 55 begins at Castle Plondor. So in Vultureman's laboratory, it looks like Vultureman had decided to make another invention. Now you're probably wondering, what kind of invention is it? Well, it's a voice duplicator that could imitate anyone or anybody. So after Vultureman had finished his invention, he didn't hesitate to try it out. So what did Vultureman do? With a voice duplicated, he imitated the voice of Mumra, waking up Slide, the leader of the mutants. Then he said, "Report to Vultureman's lab immediately." After Slide woke up and heard the voice of Mumra, or so he thought, he went to Vultureman's lab right away. So when Slide, the mutants leader, had arrived at Vultureman's lab, he asked Vultureman a question: "Where's Mumra?" And that's when, in omission by confession, Vultureman just told Slide that first of all, the real Mumra isn't here. And second of all, in omission by confession, Vultureman says that he was imitating Mumra thanks to his voice duplicator that he invented. But after hearing about Vultureman's invention and confession, Slide just dismissed him. But aha, Vultureman told Slide that he has a plan to trick the Thundercats themselves with the voice duplicator that he had just invented. So, meanwhile, the first thing that he did was to trick the Thunder Kittens, so that's what he did. Oh, speaking of the Thunder Kittens, they're busy baseboarding in the forest. Then, long story short, the Thunderkins just got a transmission from Tigra, or so they thought. Then Tigra told the Thunderkins to meet him at the vortex right away. But Wildcat just said that he and his sister were on their way there right now. Well, what are we waiting for? Wildcat said, and so the Thunderkins were on their way to the vortex. Meanwhile, the Thunderkins had just arrived at the vortex. Well, it looked kind of scary according to Wily Cat what she says in her case. "It'll be okay," Wily Cat said. But they had no idea that it was all a trick. And that's because in the Castle Plunder's control room, imitating Tigra of the Thundercats is actually Vultureman. And he, and of course Slide, the mutant's leader, were watching it happen on screen. Back with Vultureman, he continued to imitate the voice of Tigra of the Thundercats, asking the kittens to come closer to the vortex. When back with the kittens, they proceeded to do just that, but still they had no idea that it was all a trick. That was until at the very last minute that the kittens realized what was going on. They were about to be inside of the vortex. So back at the castle's control room, we have Slide, the mutant's leader. He was impressed with Vultureman's invention and his plan. And then he tells Vultureman that there's no way the kittens are getting out of the vortex, since he's very pleased with this idea. So Vultureman was told by Slide, "Although I admit it, the voice imitator was the best idea that you ever come up with." So even though Vultureman agrees, but then dismisses Sly's claim. And then Vultureman, however, said it was his idea to begin with. Meanwhile, Snarf and Lionel were busy walking until Lionel's sword told him that there was something wrong. So just like what any good guy would do, as always, Lionel looked through the sword's eye. And what he saw was unbelievable. The kittens are being trapped in a vortex. He knew that there was no time to lose, so both he and Snarf rushed off to the scene. Back at the castle's control room, while the mutants are watching Chitara on screen, they being Slide the mutant's leader and Vultureman, they came up with a plan to trick her as they did with the Thunder Kittens. So that's what happened. So following Sly's suggestion, that's what Vultureman did. So thanks to the voice imitator that Vultureman created, so what he did is that he imitated another voice, Snarf that is, to tell Chitara, speaking of which back with her, that he's in trouble and he's inside of the giant beehive somewhere. So Chitara had told Snarf that she's on her way and ended her transmission. At first, she doesn't seem to think much of it. She has no idea it was all a trick. So, deciding to think nothing of it, she decided to investigate. So, that's what she did. So back with Chitara, she makes it inside of the beehive and she tells Snarf to hang on, but she had no idea it was all a trick. She also had no idea that watching it happen was Monkey and other mutants. So back with Monkey and other mutants, he decided to follow Chitara in the beehive, so that's what he did. Back with Chitara, speaking of which, she had no idea that she had been followed by Monkey and until when she looked over her shoulder, she saw that he was right behind her. So back with Monkey and Chitara, they were battling each other once Chitara found out it was all a trick. So anyway, the battle between her and Monkey and other mutants went on and on and on and on and on. So back with Chitara, she had dodged every attack that Monkey and did. And then she heard a transmission from Slide, the leader of the mutants, that says, "You're never going to find Slide in here." And that's when she realized, yes, it is true. Just like what the Thundercats did, she too had been tricked. And according to Slide, it's bad news for Chitara because he said to coin a phrase, "Looks like we caught you in a sting operation." Well, in Sly's case, he's not wrong because here's one of the giant bees coming out. And when Chitara saw it, she couldn't believe it. So she tries to avoid it for a while. And then she tries escaping from it by climbing up, but has no such luck. So finally, she slips and fell into another room where it's full of honey. Now, here comes a bigger problem. How she's going to get out of there? Long story short, while that's going on, Tiger's in a swamp. Until what he didn't realize is that back in the castle's control room were Slide and Vultureman. So Vultureman continues to use his voice imitator. And the next voice he imitated was Chitara contacting Tigra. So meanwhile, Tigra in the swamp just received a transmission from Chitara, or so he thought, telling him that she was in trouble. "Where are you?" Tigra asked. "I'm at the far end of the swamp," Chitara said, or so he thought. So Tigra said to Chitara, or so he thought, that he's on his way, and after he ended the transmission, he crossed the bridge to the swamp. But he had no idea, just like what the kittens and Chitara did, the real one, he had been tricked just like what they did, until he fell through the hole in the ground. Well, good news, Tiger is fine, but now here comes the bad news. When he looked up, he sees Jackalman of the mutants. And then he gets a transmission from Slythe, the leader of the mutants, just like what Chitara did. So Tiger was asking Slice what he did with Chitara. Well, let's just say, to coin a phrase according to Slide, that she's in a very sticky situation right now. So after the transmission ended, that's when Tiger realizes that he wasn't alone, because when he looked over his shoulder, he sees a Gigantor coming towards him. So back with Tiger, he does what he knows best. He makes himself invisible. Then he decided to go one-on-one with a Gigantor, and so that's what he did. So what Tiger did next is that he took the club away from the Gigantor, and when he made himself visible again, what he did next is that he broke the club in half. The Gigantor got upset about this, and so he goes after Tigra. So anyway, back with the Gigantor, he continues to have a one-on-one battle with Tigra, and then both of them have been battling on and on and on and on and on. So back with Lionel, long story short, he just saw through the sort of omens what happened. Tigra was facing the Gigantor on the ground. So after Lionel saw what had happened, it's already bad enough that the kittens are in trouble, but Tigra's in trouble too. After Snarf had suspected that, he told Lionel that there is no way that he can save them all in time. Even though Lionel agrees with Snarf and said that Tigra would take care of the Gigantor. "Well, what about Panthro? Can we call him for help?" That's what Snarf was asking Lionel, but Lionel declined. The reason why he refused is because he told Snarf that they're practically on their way to the vortex right now. So he said, "Why don't we get the kittens out first?" So Lionel heads off first, and Snarf says, "Hey, wait for me!" And then he catches up with him. So speaking of Panthro, there he is in the Thunder Tank. And he just found out that all the communicators are down, and he couldn't figure out why. But, aha, according to Panther, what he says in his case, he now wonders who's responsible, so he's on his way to Castle Plondor. Meanwhile, in the castle's control room, Vultureman just told Slide, the mutant's leader, that Panthro and his Thunder Tank were on their way. He knows this because he and Slide are watching it on screen. Splendid, Slide says. It'll give us a time. So Slide, the leader of the mutants, just told Vultureman to get the glide paths activated. And so Vultureman did. And so that's what happened. Long story short, back with Panther in the Thunder Tank, what Panther doesn't even realize is that something just came from the castle to grab him in the Thunder Tank. Then, after a long story short, Slide told Vultureman to give the grappling race from the castle more power than it was, so Vultureman did. When back with Panther in the Thunder Tank, when he still had no idea that something just grabbed him and the tank, until finally they both arrived at Castle Plondor, both Panthro and the Thunder Tank itself. So back with Panthro in the Thunder Tank, now that they've arrived at the castle, it's now Panthro's turn to crash in. So that's exactly what he did. So long story short, after Slide got upset that somehow the Thunder Tanks are going to penetrate its way in, unless Vultureman did something about it. So did something Vultureman did by activating the defense system. So that's what he did. Back with the Thunder Tank now that it's inside the castle, but here comes a bigger problem. It's a heating ray, and it's heating up both Panthro and the tank. So back in the castle's control room, enter coined a phrase from Vultureman when he asked Panthro a question. What's the matter? Hot enough for you? Back with Panthro and the Thunder Tank still affected by the heat rays in the castle, things didn't look so good for him. Until finally at last he passes out in the Thunder Tank. If that's not bad enough, back with the kittens in the vortex, things didn't look so good for them either. That was until when the Thunderkins managed to hang on. That's when Wily Cat was asking his sister if she was okay. And she says that she's fine, so that's the good news. Now here comes a problem. How the kittens are going to get out of the vortex? So that's when, aha, Wily Cat told his sister that he has a plan. The first thing he did was to use a rope to lasso around one of the ledges. So that's what he did. So he and his sister Wily Cat managed to climb out the best way they knew how, with the rope, of course. But unfortunately, long story short, bad news for the Thunderkins, the rope plan didn't last that long. But that's when, until one of them came up with a plan B. So, you're probably wondering what was Plan B? According to Wily Cat, he asked his sister a question if she had any sneeze dust around. Sneeze dust? Are you kidding me? Wily Cat asked. Can't you come up with a better plan? Then Wily Cat said no, and then asked her, do you have it or not? Well, I'm reaching in my pocket, but just don't let go. So what Wily Cat did is that thanks to her and a little bit of sneeze dust on the way, guess what? That plan worked. So back with Lionel and Snarf, by the time they arrived, well, good news for them, they arrived just in time for the Thunderkins to make it themselves out of the vortex, and not a moment too soon. So after the kittens got out of the vortex, luckily for them, they landed on Snarf. So Wily Cat pleaded his case and said, thank goodness that's over. I'm with you on that, Snarf says. So then Lionel asked him a question. What were you two doing in there? Well, the Thunderkins explained earlier that Tigra must be in there, or so they thought, but Lionel dismissed him and said that's impossible because earlier he just saw him in the Sword of Omens, and he's battling with a Gigantor. So you know what this means. The kittens should have realized it was all a trick, so why the kid was asking, what's going on here? Well, I can tell you, Snarf said. In omission by confession, he says, if I'm not mistaken, it was all part of the mutant's plan. Now, back with Lionel, he told the kittens that what Snarf had suspected and is indeed correct. In other words, what Lionel was telling the Thunder Kittens that for some reason they had created a device that imitated their voices somehow. But aha, Lionel said to the kittens that he has a plan. And what was that plan? To pay the mutants a visit at Castle Plondor. So he and Snarf head off. But eventually the kittens went to catch up with them. Back with Tigra, who's still battling with the Gigantor. That wasn't until Tigra finally won thanks to his bowler whip that was wrapped around him that caused the Gigantor to fall. Next thing he did was to pull the cage that was up above so that Tigra could escape. So good news, he did. So now he runs over to the giant beehive where he can rescue Chitara. So meanwhile in the giant beehive, well, good news for Tigra, he found Chitara. But now here comes the bad news. When she told Tigra to not come any closer, and he told her that he won't, and the reason why she said that, because there's a giant bee there. So Tigra's plan was to distract the giant bee, and while he's doing that, he throws the baton at Chitara. Luckily she caught it. So after Chitara got the baton, she was fighting with the giant bee for a while. Then Tiger decided to become invisible. So what did he do? Well, Chitara doesn't see him, but it was confirmed that he's right on top of the giant bee. So both of them were on top of it, and good news for them, they both made it out of the hive. So meanwhile, back at Castle Plundor's control room, Monkey and Jackman had just captured Panthro, while Slide, the mutant's leader, and Vultureman were watching it on screen. So, back with Vultureman, he told Jackman and Monkey to bring Panthro to the control room, so that's what they did. So after Jackman and Monkey brought Panthro to the control room, well, good news for Panthro, he's still alive, according to Vultureman. Well, let's throw him in chains, Sly suggested. So that's what the mutants did. So outside the castle was Lionel and Snarf. So Lionel said to Snarf, if I'm not mistaken, Panthro's inside the castle's dungeon by now. I think it's about time we got some backup, Lionel suggested to Snarf. So, just like what any good guy would do, that's what he did. He projected a Thundercat signal from his sword, of course. So that's what happened. The first two to see the signal were the Thunder Kittens, so they head to Castle Plondor. The next two to see it were Tigra and Chitara on a giant bee, of course, so all four of them were on their way. Back at Castle Plondar, but this time in the dungeon, after they chained up Panthro, the mutants that is, that's when they heard the alarm going off. Now Sly, the leader of the mutants, is now all upset because he just now realized that the castle had been broken in, and the mutants now know who that someone is, none other than the Thundercats themselves, and they're rescuing Panthro, or at least they plan to. Long story short, now that all the mutants are in the control room, Vultureman was told by Slide, the mutants' leader, to get the voice duplicator, and so he did. So what Vultureman did is that he imitated the voice of Lionel, the leader of the Thundercats. But what the mutants didn't even realize that the real Lionel was outside and so was Snarf, and they just broke in the window in the control room. The mutants were in shock because they just found out that the real Lionel was in the control room, and so was Snarf. And look, guess who else showed up? The Thunder Kittens. They too entered the control room. So long story short, while Lionel was battling Scythe and Monkian, the Thunderkins go after Vultureman, and they tie them up a bit. So back with Lionel, he continues to use his sword's powers over the mutants. That was until what should appear inside of the window of Castle Plondar is a giant bee with Chitara and Tigra. And it's now their turn to go after the mutants, with a little help of the giant bee, of course. Well, long story short, Monkey and the mutants was busy attacking the Thunderkins until when it became Lionel's turn to have Monkey attack him instead, Monkey couldn't see a thing thanks to the Thunderkins threw capsules at him. Well, long story short, back with Lionel, he joins up with Snarf to ask if he was okay. Well, good news, Snarf only told Lionel that he's okay and he says there's nothing that he couldn't handle. Then he looks at Chitara and Tigra that's still on the giant bee to keep the mutants distracted while Lionel heads off to go set free Panthro in the dungeon. So they agreed. So back with Slythe and Vultureman, by the time they saw the giant bee coming towards them, they accidentally ran into Monkey. And that's when all three of the mutants are surrounded by the giant bee that's coming towards them, with Chitara and Tigra on top of it. Long story short, the giant bee just picked up Slythe and Vultureman. Lionel, however, back with him, he just saw Monkey and going towards the dungeon, but Lionel runs to catch up with him. So, back with Tigra and Chitara, they got off the giant bee and they ran to catch up with Lionel. Oh, speaking of Lionel, he's still pursuing Monkey and other mutants. But Lionel's not alone because Snarf's with him. So, back with Lionel and Snarf, well, bad news, they couldn't find Monkey and other mutants anywhere. But good news, they found the door to the dungeon. So, they headed straight there. Well, now that they're inside of the dungeon, well, good news, they found Panthro, who's chained up at the moment, but he's otherwise fine. So Snarf went first to ask Panthro if he was okay, but before Lionel and Snarf can do anything about it, that's when they saw Jackalman and the mutants behind them and started attacking them. So Lionel goes one-on-one with Jackalman of the mutants, and they have battled on and on and on and on and on. That was until Jackalman was defeated thanks to Lionel. So after Jackalman was defeated and then ran off back with Lionel, he turned to look at Panthro, and what did he do? He did what any good guy would do. Use the sword power to break the chainsaw on Panthro. So he did. Now that Panther was free thanks to Lionel, and that's when he told Lionel the plan to take the voice imitator away from Vultureman, and so both Lionel and Panthro and then Snarf head off. Back in the control room, the giant bee just dropped both Vultureman and Slythe's other mutants to the ground. Back in the dungeon, now that Panthro and Lionel and Snarf went up to join up with Chitara and Tigra, but suddenly, when Lionel looked over his shoulder, here comes Slythe, the mutant's leader, and Vultureman. They went downstairs just as the Thundercats did. Anyway, Panthro knows what to do. He goes to attack the mutants, both Slythe and Vultureman. The attack missed Slythe, but then froze Vultureman in ice. And he has the voice duplicator. That's what started the mess in the first place. Oh, you're probably wondering what happened to the Thunderkins? Oh, don't worry, they'll show up later. In the meantime, back with Lionel, he goes one-on-one with Slythe, the mutants' leader. That was until Monkey and other mutants just comes out of nowhere and disarms Lionel. Well, things are looking bad for the Thundercats. But suddenly, the mutants and the Thundercats just heard a noise that's coming from outside. And by surprise, we know what that noise is. It's the Thunder Tank. So back with Slythe and Monkey, and after they saw that there's a Thunder Tank that's heading in their direction, he shouted, "Let's get out of here!" And so they ran off. Well, except for Vultureman, he's still frozen in ice at the moment. But wait, that's not all. The mutants are not the only ones that are being attacked, but so were Lionel and Panthro. So Lionel asked Panthro, "What's going on?" Well, the Thunder Tank, according to Panthro, must be on remote control or something. Or in his case, someone is driving it. So by the time that the Thunder Tank has stopped and right in front of Vultureman, who's still frozen at the moment, guess who decided to come out? It's the Thunder Kittens. Told you we'd get back to them later. They're the ones that are driving the tank. Well, Riley Kit was the first to explain why. She says, "Well, we figure you could use a hand. How are we doing?" "Well, not bad," Lionel said. "It's a good thing you showed up when you did." And luckily they did. But unfortunately, Slythe and Monkey are getting away, up the stairs, of course. So when Tiger says that we can still catch up to them, but wait, aha, Panthro said that he has a plan that's even better. So you're probably wondering what was Panthro's plan? To use the voice imitator, of course, to see how the mutants like to be tricked just as the Thundercats did. So back with Monkey and Jackalman who were in the Sky Cutters and Slythe in the Nosediver, they have left the castle. As for the Thundercats, they're now in the castle's control room. Oh, by the way, the Thundercats had brought up the frozen Vultureman to the control room too. And as for Vultureman, he failed miserably to stop Panthro from imitating him. So anyway, back with Panthro still imitating Vultureman, the first mutant he tricked was Slythe, the leader. So as Slythe and the Nosediver went in one direction, next, Panthro, now imitating Vultureman, are tricking Jackalman and Monkey and then a couple of Sky Cutters as well. Long story short, back in the castle's control room, the Thundercats were watching it happen on screen. Then meanwhile, back with the mutants, Slythe, Jackalman, and Monkey, and by the time they realized they too had been tricked, just like what the Thundercats did, unfortunately, they couldn't stop their vehicles in time, so they collided. So back in the castle's control room, I guess you could say that's victory one for the Thundercats. I guess you could say the mutants have got a dose of their own medicine. Well, Panthro said that this has caused us enough trouble for one day. That means the voice imitator. But Tigra has his turn to plead his case to say we're the ones that caused the trouble to begin with. The reason? Well, according to Tigra, he says, well, regrettably, if we had come for help when we needed it, then we wouldn't be in this mess. Well, Panthro has his turn to agree with Tigra. So you know what this means. All of the Thundercats have learned their lesson, so everybody left the castle. So, back with the Thundercats on their way to Cat's Lair, remember the giant bee? Well, since it helped out both Tigra and Chitara, and of course it survived the fight okay, it was time for her to be set free. So Lionel was more than happy to help out Tigra. As for Chitara, she told the giant bee who helped them out to leave. It was time for her to go, and so it flies off. Oh, and as for Snarf, he was suggested by Wily Cat to tell the bee to thank it for its help, and so Snarf did. Well, that settles it, Snarf said. I guess the mutants won't be bothering us anymore. That was until Snarf heard the voice of the mutants' leader, Slythe, or so he thought. But just kidding, it was just Wily Kid who imitated him. Now, Snarf, who's not amused, just told Wily Kid, I wasn't fooled for a minute. I knew it was you. So, yes, it is true the Thundercats did learn their lesson that the next time that they need help, they'll ask or call for it. And so that ends episode 55.